Hey guys, this is Kevin Kim with Precision Powerlifting Systems. Today I'm going to talk about awareness underneath the barbell. So when you look at our pyramid, mindfulness is at the very bottom right in the middle. And it was put there on purpose because I do think that it makes up the center of the foundation of our training. Now, when I've discussed mindfulness in the past, I was talking about being able to be in training and in control of our thoughts, emotions, and actions in a judgment-free way. So for example, like if we're doing a max effort lift and we miss a repetition, to not be overwhelmed with negative emotions and losing that present moment. So part of mindfulness is being present in the now, right where your feet are. And so a lot of times what happens is we miss a repetition and we lose being in the present moment and we lose that judgment-free sense of things. And when this happens, we fast forward to the future. This miss means I'm not getting stronger. It means I'm not doing better. All the work that I'm doing is going to waste. And then our next decision that we make is not a rational one. Our emotional brain ends up making that decision, and it's never the best decision for us. What we want is we want to be able to view that situation in a judgment-free way, where yes, our initial reaction might be this negative reaction, but to be aware of that reaction, to be able to center ourselves back in the current moment and to make the best decision possible for us at that given moment in time. This is when our rational brain takes over and we're able to make the best decisions possible. So we need to view these situations as learning situations. You can even view it from the other end of the spectrum. So let's say you hit a max effort lift and you're fired up because you hit a 5-pound PR. And then you let those emotions just get the best of you. You throw 10 more pounds on there and you grind it out and you're high-fiving your friends. And with every up, there's a down. With every rise, there's a fall, right? So what you're doing, even with that emotional response in a positive way, two things happen there. One, you added more weight when you probably shouldn't have. Right? If you've hit that 5-pound PR and there's more in the tank, that means you're more recovered to have another quality session later on. There's nothing to gain from taking that other one at that current point in time. Now, I will say there is an asterisk with this because I do think there's a time and a place to really challenge yourself in these situations. But it needs to be very, very calculated. So one, you have that emotional response and you automatically put more weight on the bar. On top of that, if you're getting that emotional in a positive way, you're gonna have the same, there's always a balancing act, right? So if you have all this positive energy that's going out there when you hit that PR, there's gonna be a ton of negative energy to balance it out when things don't go your way. So it's really important that we're in control of our thoughts, emotions, and actions and remain in the present moment. Now, there are times where we want the brain to wander and there's a recovery process to it, right? So when our brain wanders, our executive function, the thing that has us really focus and concentrate on a specific task, which requires a ton of energy, it gets to relax when we let our brain wander. But we want to pick our spots. So we want our training and our sports performance or the endeavor that we're really trying to have high performance in, we want to be at our freshest for that. And we want our attention and focus and everything going into those training days. So that's really important. But we also need those pieces to recover. And part of allowing them to recover is having moments of time where we let the brain wander. And that wandering brings in creativity and can help with problem solving and stuff too. So it's not like we want to be always focused on one thing all the time. We just need to pick and choose the spots where we want to be present in the moment and when we want our executive function to recover and let our brain wander and our creativity go. So it's really important probably that you plan out these periods of time, because I don't think necessarily spending family time and letting the brain wander and just cycle through its creative patterns is probably the best time. You probably want to be in the present when you're with your family and friends and stuff like that. So there could be dedicated periods of time where you start doing this. So we want to be able to be in the moment, judgment-free, in control of our thoughts, our actions, and our emotions. Now, what I was realizing was, like, even for me, I was very good at doing this before the lift, but then during the lift, I wasn't as good at doing it. And then after the lift, because I wasn't aware of what was happening so much underneath the barbell, I thought I was because I was using this conscious effort, this conscious focal effort on certain aspects that I thought I was present in the moment, but we'll get to this in a minute. But then I was using the video afterwards to kind of give me that feedback. So I was present all the way up until I got underneath that barbell. And then I allowed that ego, that thinking part of my brain to take over. So that part, that thinking part of our brain doesn't connect with the doing parts of our body, right? So what it does is it yells a message so loud that it can muffle the feedback that we're getting from our environment, right? So it's called proprioception. So like our muscles and Our body's aware of itself in space, and it gets feedback from our muscles, our tendons, and the environment itself. And there's that bottom-up information that comes into the brain, and the brain processes it. But if we're always in this top-down approach underneath the barbell, where our executive function, that like strong conscious focus of attention is on drive your chest up, whatever the cue is, you're gonna muffle the sounds, you're gonna muffle that information coming in. So let me explain this a little bit better. We have perception and we have sensation. So sensations are always there, but the ones that we acknowledge and pay attention to, that's our perception. So right now, when you're listening to this video, I want everybody to to pay attention to their feet and how they feel on the floor, right? A few seconds ago, you probably weren't even aware of how that your feet were even on the floor. You knew they were on the floor, but you weren't feeling it. That sensation was always there. But now that you're actually focusing on it, you're perceiving it, so you're getting a lot more information back. So we want to perceive when we are moving underneath that barbell, because that's how our body's going to learn. We need to trust our body that it knows what it's doing, and that it's going to take that information and it's going to create a more efficient pattern for itself and allow it to learn. But if we use our ego, that conscious thinking brain, to muffle those sounds, it's like we don't trust our body. It's like having a helicopter parrot that's just yelling at you the whole time to do something, and you're struggling to do it. And what it can do is it can create this hyper intention, right? Where we're thinking so much about doing something, we mistake this for being focused, but we're thinking so hard about doing something that it becomes almost impossible to actually do that task, right? So this is where it's almost like this paradoxical intention piece that comes into play here, where it's like, I'm focusing so hard on this, why is my body not doing it? And it's because that thinking part of your brain is not connected to the doing part of the body. You need to have that doing part of the brain on, which is just kind of observing what's happening around it and trusting your body to get it done. So the majority of lifters that I coach have been lifting for a while. At this point, they know how to lift. One of the things that I think really, Jess is coming in to distract the video, as always. One of the things that, when we're learning lifts, right, having that slow, focused intention probably plays a good role, right? So if you're brand new in the gym, being slow with the movements and really just like building it up over time, like there's got to be a process with that. And if you look at any long-term athletic development system, like whether it's the Greeks, the Russians, the Bulgarians, they all have this process set up. So most of it starts with like gymnastics earlier on, right? So you learn all this spatial awareness and body awareness stuff early on. Like gymnastics just puts you in a position where you got to really develop certain skills, and it builds you a bigger skill set, right? So like all the Russians at a given age, as children, they're forced to do gymnastics to build upon that skill set, and then the specific stuff comes later on. So depending on your background as an individual, what sports you played, your genetic makeup, even your psychological makeup, right? If you're always nervous and stuff, that part of your brain's always going to be on and always talking to you, so it's going to make it hard to perceive certain things. So depending on where you're at, your body's either better than some or worse than some at actually getting that proprioceptive feedback, that sensory bottom-up feedback that we need to actually learn these movements. And you just may not have the biggest skill set, the biggest toolbox to deal with some of the changing environments that you're going to encounter. But it doesn't mean we can't train it, even as adults. Even though neuroplasticity kind of decreases at the age of 25, it doesn't mean we can't continue to learn. Adults can learn. It's just very different in how they have to learn. This is where deliberate practice comes into play. Which brings me to my next point. So this is something that I've really screwed up with over the years. So with deliberate practice, you need to have clear goals, something to really focus on, right? And it gets really easy to think of like focus means when I'm underneath that barbell, I'm just gonna think of driving my chest up or one cue. I'm really gonna just focus on that. But that's not trusting your body to do it. You're developing a certain skill set, and you got to learn how to trust your body underneath that barbell in order to allow it to function at its highest capabilities. So I think of like lifters that I've coached over the years when they have like some technical deviation that's happening, and I tell them what to focus on. It'll be like push your knees out, chest up, pick your normal cue. But it just doesn't get better. It just over time it's the same. The weights might get heavier and they might improve and stuff like that, but there's always this 3 to 5 year period of time where people are going to get better anyways. So in spite of those things that I'm doing as a coach, those inadequacies of my communication with them on how to improve technique. I don't know better than their body. So I mentioned our executive function in our brain, that conscious awareness, that thinking brain. It requires a lot of energy, but it's not very good at processing a lot of information. Our subconscious is very good. It's like the world's best supercomputer on steroids. So if we can use those parts of our brain and really just trust our body to be able to control itself in space and to do its thing, and we continuously trust it over time, and we put it in positions to learn and trust that it'll learn in those positions, we can really enhance skill development in adults, people under 25, it doesn't matter, right? This is how learning needs to happen. It can't be this conscious awareness thing all the time, because it slows you down, it tenses you up, and then you're not going to function as athletically. So to explain this, I'm going to use a different sport. So let's say we have a mixed martial artist. When they're throwing combinations, they're not thinking, I need to step with my left foot, throw my right hand, make sure I'm bringing my hips through, I'm using my hips to propel my hand. Like, they're not thinking about those things, right? So there's like a little saying that we used to have all the time where it's just flow and go, right? So like when you're shadow boxing, one of the things that was always told to me during shadow boxing was, don't even think about what you're throwing, just let it happen, right? So just throw your combinations, just keep moving, just keep throwing. And don't even like, sometimes we would do it in a mirror, so you're kind of responding to the same actions that you're doing, just obviously reversed. But there was not thinking, just go, and it just kind of like develops that just like awareness and that flow that you need when you're in there. Because if you start to think, there's going to be this slight hesitation. And when there's hesitation, you're gonna lose. And like I thought, if we go even back further, like playing soccer, if I was in a tight space with a ball, or there's a 50-50 ball and it's, you're going into the ball and you got to somehow win that battle there, I'm not thinking about all the things I have to do. I'm just doing it. I'm trusting my body to do it. And the reason why it's capable of doing that is because I put myself into those positions in training, and I train them over and over and over again. And I've prepared well enough. And because I've prepared well enough, my conscious brain can shut down and it can trust my body to do the things that I've prepared it to do. Now, no matter what, and this is, when I say you get the total that you deserve, and this is part of it, right? Part of this is trusting your body to get done what it's capable of getting done on this given day. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect or any of those things, but you got to trust it to do its thing. And it's always going to be better than if you don't trust and you try to slow things down and you try to make your conscious brain become that helicopter parent, always screaming at it to do something, chest up, and you're just slowing down, and there's just not going to be that same fluid motion. There's not going to be the same output, and there's not going to be the same learning that happens. So it's going to take longer to actually get better doing it that way. So what we need to have awareness underneath the barbell. And so one of the things that I was like focusing on before, so if we want conscious attention to something, right, we can visualize the lift before we execute it. So powerlifting is a little bit different than some sports because we don't necessarily get, if we're doing a max effort lift and we want to hit a 5-pound PR, you're competing with yourself. So it's kind of like this fine line between skill development and competition, especially because it's not like we have all these drills that we can do for an hour and a half and then compete, and I get like doing repetitions and all of that stuff, but at the same time, just because they're so related to the competition lifts themselves, even if it's variations, there's this different stress to it. So one of the things that we can do is we can visualize the lift. And it's not just showing us executing it to the best of our abilities, but what we need to do is we need to see it from ourselves, right? From inside of ourselves. We need to feel what it feels like to keep our chest up or spread the floor, whatever cue you're focusing on, right? Like feel that happening. And then it helps to have like a third-party perspective. So next, when you visualize watching yourself do it from outside of your body. So you feel it, you see it, and you just execute it over and over and over. And then when it's time to get underneath the barbell, you just let it happen. So one of the things that I've been telling my lifters is just observe what happens under the barbell. Don't try to fix it, because the second you think there's a problem and you need to fix it, that ego, that conscious thinking mind is gonna come in, and it's going to try to overpower the other parts of your brain. And that's not what we want. If we want to execute at the highest of levels, we need to trust our body. And when that happens, that overthinking, we're not trusting our body. We're trying to force things to happen. And that hyperintention never works out well. So what I've been telling my lifters to do is just to observe what's happening underneath. That I don't want to see a video, but I want you to narrate me a story. I want to know what thoughts came into your mind, what the bar felt like on your back, what your feet felt like on the floor. Were you aware of all of these pieces the whole time that they were happening? And not to overthink it, just squat. Just squat and observe. And when you get out from underneath that barbell, just write it down. Write down what you observed. And what we started to find was just from observing, the technique would look better. So once we just quieted that conscious mind and we just allowed the body to lift and just to observe, technique got better without even having to focus on anything, right? All we're doing is being present in the moment and allowing our body to do its thing that we've prepared it to do for however long we've been lifting. Like I said, these aren't beginners. If you're a brand new lifter and it's your first time squatting underneath a barbell, well, yeah, let's slow it down. Let's work on those cues. Let's develop a baseline trust first, right? It's like a baby walking, right? We put it into positions where it can kind of learn, and we're guiding it along the way, and it can be like that in the beginning, right? But over time, we got to start developing this athletic awareness that's happening underneath the barbell. And the other thing too, when a baby's learning how to walk, we don't laugh at it when it's falling and make fun of it because it's unable to execute a very easy movement. Like if we have that same attitude that we had as a baby when we fall, it's no big deal, we get back up and we try to do it again and we fall. That's what training is. It's got to be the same thing. And the baby's not overthinking it. It's just exploring its environment and learning how to do it. And that's all we need to do here. So we got to shut off that conscious part of our brain. So how do we learn how to do that? So some people can be more prone to being anxious and nervous underneath weights anyways, because powerlifting can be a kind of scary sport. So how do we control the brain underneath the barbell? So it starts 10 minutes of meditation every day. So if you're sitting there and if it's a guided meditation, they're just like, pay attention to your thoughts, but let them pass and use your breath to refocus you, right? It develops this mindset of when you're sitting there, you understand that these thoughts are coming in, but you're able to recenter your focus each time. So for me in the deadlift, so what happens for me is I've been shifting to my left. Once the bar hits a little bit below my knees, I'm shifting to my left. I've been doing it constantly. And I was like, what am I feeling underneath that bar? And I'm really like thinking to myself, like, drive your knees out, spread the floor, like all of those things, but I'm just failing to execute it. This is a perfect example of hyper intention, right? I'm so consciously focused on doing one thing that there's this paradox that happens. It's almost impossible for me to do it, especially as the weights get heavier. So what I was doing is in between, I was visualizing my lifts, but at the same time, I was just when I was walking around or standing there, I was just paying attention to how my weight was shifting on my feet, just being aware. This brings me into the present moment because every step that I take, it is the present moment. Every weight shift I'm having, it is the present moment. So it's helping me come into the present moment. I'm just training that, and because I'm becoming so aware of it, once I got underneath the barbell, I didn't have to think. I was just aware of how my feet were. And my technique cleared up. It got much better. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was just being aware and shutting off my conscious brain and allowing my body to do it. The same thing with my squats last week. I was just allowing my body to do it and just being aware of it. And what's funny with the squats is, it's like my second or third set. The first rep that I did, I literally had this, I could feel my chest position, my feet. I was moving at a good speed, like everything clicked. So I hit that rep, and the first thing my conscious mind goes, wow, that was a good rep. And I immediately then was like, oh wow, my brain shouldn't be in this position saying this right now. It should be focusing on the next rep. And then my next rep wasn't as good because those thoughts came in. And then I became aware of that like, oh hey, don't be so surprised when this happens the next time. Like execute these a little bit better. So it's never going to be perfect. Those thoughts are always going to come in. But that 10 minutes of meditation and practicing that skill set of just being aware in the present moment, because that's where we are under the bar, right? If we're chest up, we're not really in the present moment, right? Because that doesn't happen until further down. And we're not going to learn how to do that if we're not being receptive to the information that's coming in from our environment and that's coming up from our muscles and our tendons and everything else. That proprioceptive feedback is how our body learns about spatial awareness. And that's how it's going to learn how to execute these lifts underneath the barbell. And it's probably why so many people are like, oh, the second I focused on fixing my technique, my lifts got worse. So one, like changing angles, of course you're going to be stronger at some angles than others. And you're never going to tell me that physics doesn't matter, that a longer lift is going to be a better lift in the long run. Yes, right now we may be using a conventional deadlift, we may be squatting with a little bit more of a narrow stance, but that doesn't mean we don't try to develop a shorter lift over time. Because I think the highest ceiling you're gonna have is manipulating ROM to the range of motion to the best of your abilities. So a lot of people will be like, oh, if I tried to fix my technique and it got worse. Well, yeah, changing angles, sometimes you're gonna see a decrease in abilities because those aren't where your strengths lie. But other times I think what happens is our brain becomes super focused on doing those things, and it's not learning the same way, it's not executing the same way, it's slowing it down, right? So if you have to think for a second, you're gonna be a little bit slower, and you're gonna be a little bit more tense, and your movements aren't gonna be as fluid. So you're just not gonna see the same output that you would see if you're just more relaxed and doing what you're supposed to do under the bar. And when I say relaxed, I don't mean like not getting tight underneath heavier weights, doing what you're supposed to do, but allowing your body to do it, not having your conscious brain kind of put its thoughts and muffle those sounds, like trusting yourself to do it under those situations. And I find it to be far less taxing. When you're more aware underneath the barbell and you're just focused on the lifts themselves, like the time kind of almost stands still. So if you're doing a high rep set, it never feels as bad if you're just focusing on those things, because those thoughts don't come into your brain like, wow, this is heavy. Wow, I'm breathing hard. Oh my God, I got 2 more reps or whatever it is. Like those thoughts aren't coming in because your focus is just on feeling your feet on the ground, feeling the bar in your back. You're not trying to do anything different. You're just trusting your body knows how to do the lift, but you're just being aware of those things. And for me, the meditation has really helped me underneath the barbell. And what's funny is like in the other sports, you end up just like when they talk about like breathing in between rounds or something like that, bringing you into the present moment. Like there are certain things, again, punch in the face is going to bring you into the present moment. But I think having an opponent and competing when you're focusing on a ball or your other teammates, or there's always something to kind of grasp your attention. But in powerlifting, it gets a little bit more difficult because you're just left alone with what's between your ears. And that can be very noisy sometimes. So one of the things that, you know, for me, and I'm still trying to figure out this aspect now, is how to communicate this and how to make it better with my lifters. So instead of telling them what to fix now, I'm just having them bring a notebook and a pen into the gym and just observing what's happening when they're underneath the barbell. Like, what did you feel? What did you notice? Were any thoughts coming into your brain? Like, tell me a story. I want to know the story of that set. Like, I took it out of the rack. I could feel the weight in my hands, and then all of a sudden I was like, wow, this feels heavy, right? Those thoughts came in. One of my lifters, and this really cracked me up, was she was about to squat, and she's like, the thought that came into my head was, wow, the Cure is a really underrated band, right? Like these thoughts are always there, but it's that awareness of them, and then learning how to refocus ourselves into the present moment to be able to execute a lift is imperative for us to develop the highest level skill underneath that barbell. So for me, I talked about my squat and my deadlift, but the bench I was having a really hard time. So I do bench the day after squats, but I also write articles on Wednesdays. And I do put a lot of focus and attention into the articles that I write. I read a lot on Wednesdays. So what might have happened there was I was tired from training. I continued to do stuff the following morning. And then when I went to train, my brain was just tired and my mind wasn't able to be as clear as it normally is in those situations. So like I was thinking, I was focusing on the lifts, and what's funny is when I watched the video, I'm like, the lifts look fine. But I realized when I brought it down, all I could feel was my hands pushing the weight or my elbows pushing the weight. I didn't feel my back on the bench. I was in and out of feeling my feet on the floor. So, and then I started to like overthink those things and not just to relax and just observe. So like there were times where I was able to relax and observe and just kind of be aware of everything. And I think what we need to do at first is just develop that awareness. So before we try to master technique, we need to be aware of those things so that I can ask a lifter like, hey, what did you observe in that set? And it's, well, when I hit the hole and I started to stand, all I could feel was my right foot on the floor. All right. Well, this time, let's just pay attention to our feet on the floor and let's maintain that balance. Don't try too hard, just let it happen. We get back to that perception and sensation. The sensation of our feet on the floor is always there, but maybe that's the first time that we became aware of it, right? So now let's focus on perceiving our feet staying balanced on the floor, but we got to let our body do it. We can't think about it. We just got to focus on the feeling and just allow that feeling to happen and don't try to force it. and just stay balanced. And what really helped me was in between sets, just focusing on staying balanced on my feet, walking around, standing there, just feeling the weight shift. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was just trying to feel the weight shift and just be aware of that information coming in. And then it just happens seamlessly underneath the weights. We'll see tomorrow when I do heavier weights, because there's still strength issues that come into this. So if my hips aren't as strong in that position and I can't keep my knees out because my back's got to take over, well, that's a different story, right? I still need to pay attention to those things, and just I can continue to develop my awareness while the next exercise that I do develops the strength in the lagging area. So it's a combination of all of these things. Like, you gotta, if you're gonna trust your body's gotta have the tools in order for it to execute the lifts as well. So strong hips is a tool that it needs, and it needs to develop those skills too, so that you can trust it in those situations. For it to maintain its positions and stuff. So awareness underneath the barbell is literally, it just comes down to like that same mindset that we have when we're meditating has to be the same way underneath the barbell. And of course you're getting tight, and it's not the same as you sitting on a chair with your eyes closed, woosah the whole time. It's literally, you're executing the lift, but it's the same mindset. You're getting that, you're allowing your subconscious brain to let your body do its thing. The thinking part of your brain isn't connected to the doing part of the body. They're disconnected, and we need the mind and we need the body to work together. So you need to shut off your conscious ego, that thinking part of your brain, and you need to turn on the observational part of your brain. And this is how we learn. This is how the body gets better. And when a rep happens, right, and you feel a shift or something like that, you need to keep that emotional mind at bay, right? You need to be able to view those observations judgment-free. So, hey, I'm shifting, no matter how hard I tried to, not hard, I think that's a poor way, and I'm still learning how to communicate this, but no matter how much I try to stay balanced on my feet, I can feel that shift. You're aware of it. Keep developing that awareness. But let's find another way that we can get you to stay balanced on your feet. We gotta attack those hips more, right? So we're gonna attack those hips and keep developing that awareness. And I think that awareness too, to another point, it helps develop ideas to attack weaknesses, which is really important. So one of the things that I'm sick of doing as a coach is spinning my wheels. Lifters will text me videos and it's like, push your knees out, push your knees out, push your knees out. But they can't do that if they're just hyper-focused on trying to push their knees out, and that hyper-intention. And they're not letting their body learn, because your body doesn't learn that way. You can't force it to happen. It's gotta just naturally learn, and it's gotta happen. And you gotta trust it, that it can learn those things, that it can execute to the best of its ability right now, and that it's gonna learn to become more efficient over time, because you're gonna put it in positions to learn those lessons. But again, you have to learn those lessons judgment-free. If that emotional brain kicks on and you're like, oh, I can't fucking do this, like when that starts to happen, that's the conscious brain again. It's gonna shut off the learning pieces of the body. So you gotta learn to quiet your mind, to just observe and just allow things to happen. You can't force it, you gotta let it happen. Trust yourselves and let it happen. Easier said than done, and it's something that I think you need to experience. So again, just to summarize, one of the things I'm having a lot of lifters do is pen and paper, because you're not gonna bullshit yourself the same way, writing it out, is get up from a lift. Don't go to your video, don't look at the video, nothing. I want you to literally just think about that repetition, what you were aware of. What happened, your thoughts. What did the bar feel like? Did you feel the bar in your hands, your back on the bench, your feet on the floor, the bar in your back? Your eyesight, did it change? Like, did you feel your feet on the floor throughout the whole lift? Like, ask yourself a bunch of questions and just figure out what you were observing during that lift. Then you can go to the video and you can analyze the video and be like, okay, so at the bottom of the squat, my knees were caving in, but I wasn't aware of my feet at the bottom. So this time I'm gonna just bring my awareness to my feet on the floor. I'm not gonna try to fix anything, because the second you say, I need to fix this, that conscious brain comes in, and it's that hyper intention. It's not gonna work. You can't force it to happen. You gotta let it happen. So you need to visualize it ahead of time. Get tons of repetitions in your mind before the next time you go onto the bar. Think about what it feels like to do it and have that conscious awareness. Pay attention to how your weight feels how your feet feel on the floor. And then just let it happen and be aware of what your feet feel like on the floor, but just with an observing mind, so that your body can get that feedback and your body can learn from that feedback and understand that the next rep isn't gonna be the perfect rep, that each rep added together is gonna yield a continuous pursuit of perfection, knowing that we're never gonna get to perfect. And that's where we want to get. We want that mind underneath that barbell. And it's very hard to get, but it's something we're all going to work on. I'm going to work on my communication as a coach to be able to explain these concepts and hopefully develop better ways to help lifters develop these pieces. And it's something I'm going to focus on doing in the gym myself. So for now, you can follow me on Instagram. It's KWKNR Team Precision Powerlifting Systems.